Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees, the podcast. Well, Brian Cashman clears the air a little bit, and this is off the press conferences they gave at the end of the season there. We kind of covered that in the last episode, but he did have some remarks on the Evan and Tiki show on WFAN, so if you didn't have a chance to catch that, kind of go through it. Had some interesting points regarding all the rumors and or just the stereotypes that he kind of makes out the lineups for Boone, and also a little bit of a upstairs disagreement regarding the prognosis, or at least the severity of Anthony Volpe's injury there. So kind of interesting points, so I figured get into that. But before we do, make sure you subscribe to this podcast, Section 420 Talkin Yankees, the podcast, wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and also go to YouTube, search for Section 420 Talkin Yankees, subscribe there as well. That's the video version of the show. So again, last episode here for you audio podcast subscribers, kind of went over, Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman kind of gave their end of the year remarks there, just kind of, make a statement and then take a couple questions of, from the press. And again, the impression you got is that the Yankees aren't looking to drastically change anything from, this year to next year. So it's going to probably be more of the same, more or less. You see that, they're going to make any changes. So, no surprise there. And, of course, Aaron Boone, he has his job security intact. If the Yankees got bounced by Boston, maybe, possibly, that could have been a different situation. But even with that in mind, it just didn't seem like the House, Cashman, Boone lineage is just there, and doesn't seem like anything's really going to upset that at this time. Is Boone in his last contract? Probably. He's going to be signed through 26 and 27, and maybe as soon as the Yankees do, where they cycled out Joe Torre, they cycled out Girardi. I guess after a while, this is probably going to be Boone's quote unquote last cycle, unless he just miraculously wins 2 World Series in a row, which I don't see happening. Again, this is probably going to be Boone's go around, but nevertheless, you didn't get the impression any big changes. But I think what was the more interesting was afterwards, Cashman went on the Evan and Tiki show on WFAN there, and that one was actually more interesting, and it had some more, at least biting things to say versus the press conference, which was kind of blah. First of all, he was asked the whole situation with Jeter, where Jeter now announced with Fox Sports kind of made a bit of a strong statement regarding that basically Aaron Boone's not making any decisions at all, and that's all coming from Brian Cashman. And that's in terms of the lineups and the pitching rotation, everything like that. Well, Cashman actually addressed that and quite instantly said that he actually even called Jeter right after that. And just to kind of say, hey, hey, bro, where are you getting that information from? Has anyone told you that? And Jeter just kind of really said no, and it's really just interesting to see this Cashman call out Jeter in that way. And he pretty much cleared the air and quite interestingly said that, whether it was Joe Torre, whether it was Joe Girardi, or now with Aaron Boone, he has zero control in terms of he does not make out the lineups for Aaron Boone. So, that seems stuff I probably even said just because I've been hearing it so much and no one's really dismissed it or denied it. So, it kind of seemed like it was. But Brian Cashman actually put it out there that he does not make out the lineups for Aaron Boone. They quote unquote have discussions. Now, what are those discussions that, it's kind of interesting to see, sort of Boone could physically write out the lineup. But again, is he being swayed one way or another what to write in there? So that's the question maybe we're seeing. But at least Cashman kind of just denied the Jeter statement there, and even admitted that Jeter kind of just said something almost like, well, I'm doing analysis now on Fox, and I have to make statements, I have to say things, so kind of I just put it out there. But even Jeter said he really had no proof behind any of that other than just hearing it from others, which again has been kind of the past couple of seasons, not only with the Yankee organization, but they say a lot of organizations now seemingly like the lineups are being put out there by the general managers and all their statistics and all their analytic people versus having the manager do it old school like a Billy Martin style, or even doing something off the cuff or just throwing names in a hat and just dumping out there if the lineup's not working there. So I found that kind of interesting, and Cashman clearly said, hey, you go ask Joe Torre, go ask Joe Girardi. I don't make out the lineups for them. They do it themselves. We have a discussion. So, I just found that interesting because after all these years, that was kind of put out there as the way it's done, and no one denied it. So, it seemed like, okay, that's the way it is. But actually, Cashman said, no, that wasn't the case there. So, I did find that interesting. And, of course, what was also interesting, I found that also was the situation with Anthony Volpe, where it seemed like, both Boone and Cashman were kind of not on the same page exactly. Now, when Boone was asked during the press conference, he said that really, even though he had that injury and he needed the surgery, it's not something that really affected his play other than it would just balk on him once in a while. Well, according to Cashman, mentioned that once they did go in there in the surgery and they saw the actual damage, versus they thought they had before they started cutting, and compared to after what they saw actually after they did the cutting, that his injury, whatever he had there, torn labrum, was actually worse off than they thought and probably did affect his play there. So he gets the medical reports more than Boone does, so maybe he has a little bit more insight, but it just seems like the both of them kind of had a little different prognosis on how severe that injury was in terms of affecting Volpe's play. So if that's the case there, again, I feel a little better off with the Cashman one, just saying that, at least Volpe could be better, and probably the damage he had was worse than we thought, because, again, he was kind of terrible at batting 200. Was that affecting his hitting average-wise? Maybe. We don't know yet, but it just seemed more negative with Boone there, because Boone was like, well, no, the injury didn't bother him that much. He would normally be like that type of player, hitting 210 there, so... so that wasn't really comforting, and I kind of expressed that in the last episode, at least with the Cashman version, say, you know what, no, the damage was probably worse than we thought, and it probably was affecting his play. Well, at least I could be happy now that, yes, if he recovers from the shoulder then, and then he'll probably maybe just be a better, more effective player, again, batting average-wise there, because, obviously we've seen with Volpe's his issues. He can hit the home run once in a while, all that stuff, but, so many strikeouts. I mean, especially during the Toronto series, there's so many strikeouts, and there's not putting, enough contact on the ball there, so hopefully, if that's the case and he heals properly, maybe Volpe will be a better average hitter, which the Yankees need. Again, he doesn't have to hit 300, he doesn't have to hit 270, but if he hits like 250 or 260 compared to what he's been doing the past couple of seasons, you'll take that as a major victory. But of course, with this injury there, looks like, and it's kind of confirmed, he's likely not available for the start of the season, so he's going to probably be delayed, as well as we know the delay is going to be, as well as calls for Doan. And of course, you have Cole coming back from his Tommy John. Can't expect all those people to be there in April, but at least some point into the 2026 season. And, we just got to hope it's not a situation like Luis Gil. I mean, Luis Gil, we thought maybe he's going to lose a month or two, but we almost didn't get Luis Gil almost to like August. So hopefully not the case with the likes of like Cole, Rodon, and Volpe there, but I wouldn't be shocked, because, Yankees would kind of always set these timetables, and it's always a few months back. But again, as I make it up the lineups, yeah, I could at least understand that. But there were some issues in the past. I don't know if you remember this one. It was a Girardi's last year. Cashman picked up a guy, Chris Carter. He was a right-handed slugger, tall guy. He was with Houston for a while. In fact, if you remember that Andy Pettit's last game in Houston, I think he was the guy who hit the ground ball double play that Yankees was able to get the complete game of victory for Andy Pettit on his last game he ever pitched in his major league career. That guy, Chris Carter. Well, again, he was never a great average hitter overall. I mean, it was like kind of like a same thing. It was like a 210, 220 hitter, but his forte that he was mashed left-handed pitching. And we see Cashman bring these guys on, sort of like when they brought in Austin Slater, who people that this specifically hit left-handed or vice versa there. And Chris Carter was one of these guys, but it seemed like Girardi didn't like him for whatever reason. Girardi wouldn't play him enough. And, supposedly the rumors were that both Cashman and Girardi were butting heads over this guy. Cashman wanted him in there more because, hey, just put him in there against left-handed pitching, and Girardi didn't like his overall play there. So maybe even the manager's making that the lineup, but you see some, string pulling and some influencing going on from the GM office there. So to what degree there, I'm not sure if Cashman's totally honest on that. If he's not trying to, kind of force feed players down some manager's throat. Hey, you should play this guy a little bit more. He hits left hand is much better than this person, all that stuff. So who knows there? But again, those are probably the two pieces I found quite interesting. So if you didn't get a chance to hear it, hopefully you're able to soak that in. And again, we're just kind of waiting for the World Series to shake out. The Dodgers blow away the Brewers. I mean, Brewers were one of the best teams of baseball, but again, when it came to the National League Championship Series, got wiped out in 4 games there, so the Dodgers will await the winner of the Blue Jays Mariners. Right now, the Mariners are up 3-2. And it's just kind of sad because, if you look at the Yankees against the Mariners this season, they were 5-1. They took 2 out of 3 games in Seattle, and that's one of the games where Oswaldo Cabrera broke his ankle coming on home there, if you remember that series. And then they swept them at Yankee Stadium 3 games there. So the team, the Seattle Mariners, are right now in the driver's seat up 3-2, who possibly could go to the World Series. The Yankees rocked them 5-1 this season. So it just goes, when you face somebody, the situation, the timing, and it's just kind of annoying the Yankees weren't in there. And, of course, a lot of people saying that it would have been a nice little battle instead of Seattle and Toronto, which I don't know how many people are excited over that. If you could have Seattle and the Yankees and the whole Aaron Judge versus Cal Raleigh kind of home run derby back and forth, that whole angle, would have been a much more excitable American League Championship Series. And I'm sure the ratings people at Fox would have rather had the Yankees in there. And I'm obviously the Dodgers, so they got a big draw as well. But, Dodgers, Mariners, I don't know how excitable that's going to be there, but probably right now you're looking at that. And I'd rather have that there. I do not want to see the Blue Jays get in there at all. If someone's going to win, I'd rather it beat Seattle. Not sure if I would root for the Dodgers or root for Seattle yet. That's yet to be determined. Kind of leaning towards Seattle a bit, just stick with the American League there. But again, we got to see how that all shapes out there. So we'll catch you next time.